What if some of Earth's most legendary creatures didn't vanish entirely, but simply learned how to hide in the most extreme, unforgiving environments imaginable? For centuries, humans have shared fireside stories about massive, elusive figures wandering the frozen peaks of the Himalayas, always remaining just out of our sight. We call it the Yeti, a towering, bipedal ape-like cryptid that stalks the snowy roof of the world, leaving behind only oversized footprints. But to dismiss the Yeti as merely a fairy tale is to ignore a profound truth about human history and the hidden shadows of evolution. Not so long ago, in the grand scale of deep time, our ancient ancestors were not the only human species walking upon this vibrant planet. We shared the world with Neanderthals, Denisovans, and towering primates like Gigantopithecus, creating a landscape teeming with diverse, intelligent bipedal life. As Homo sapiens expanded across the globe, these ancient cousins and giant apes slowly faded into extinction, or so the official fossil record firmly suggests. Yet, the human brain is an extraordinary pattern-matching machine, deeply wired to remember the predators and competitors that once shared our ancient, untamed ecosystems. This deep evolutionary memory might explain why almost every culture on Earth has a legend of a wild, hairy humanoid living just beyond the firelight. The extreme high altitudes of the Himalayas present a unique ecological island, a frozen fortress where oxygen is scarce and survival requires immense biological adaptation. Local Tibetan and Sherpa folklore treats the Yeti not as a supernatural monster, but as a physical, flesh-and-blood animal sharing their harsh, beautiful mountain ecosystem. They carefully describe different variations of the creature, some large and aggressive, others smaller and elusive, deeply woven into their cultural understanding of nature's balance. To the indigenous people of the Himalayas, the mountains are sacred and dangerous, and the Yeti perfectly embodies the untamed, unpredictable forces of the wild. When Western explorers first ventured into these treacherous peaks in the early 20th century, they brought back chilling tales of massive, unexplained footprints in the snow. In 1951, mountaineer Eric Shipton photographed a distinctly humanoid footprint on the Menlung Glacier, sparking a global frenzy and drawing science into the mystery. The photograph was genuinely striking. The print was broad, featured a large opposable toe, and seemed entirely too massive to belong to a snow leopard. Suddenly, the Yeti was no longer just local folklore, it became a tangible biological puzzle, a massive question mark stamped directly into the glacial ice. Scientific expeditions were quickly launched, funded by eager museums and newspapers, carrying plaster for casts and cameras to capture the beast that mocked modern taxonomy. Hair samples, bone fragments, and mysterious animal hides were collected from remote mountain monasteries. Each promised to be the ultimate proof of the creature's hidden existence. For a fleeting, thrilling moment, the entire world held its breath, wondering if a relic population of ancient hominids had somehow survived the frozen Pleistocene epoch. For decades, evidence remained maddeningly out of reach, consisting mostly of blurry photographs, local anecdotes, and heavily disputed plaster casts. But science is relentless, and the turn of the 21st century brought a revolutionary new tool to the snowy peaks: advanced DNA analysis. Researchers realized that animals constantly shed their genetic material into the environment, leaving invisible, undeniable trails of biological data across the snow. If a massive, undiscovered primate was truly roaming the high Himalayas, it would inevitably leave behind hair, feces, or microscopic skin cells. In 2014, geneticist Brian Sykes analyzed 36 hair samples collected from around the world, all attributed to anomalous, unknown primates. The scientific results were a fascinating blow to the myth, revealing that the legendary Himalayan samples did not belong to an undiscovered ape. Instead, the genetic sequences matched something entirely different, pointing directly to the ancient ancestors of modern polar bears and local brown bears. A subsequent, more comprehensive study in 2017 sequenced the mitochondrial genomes of numerous purported Yeti remains carefully preserved in monasteries. Mysterious bones, teeth, skin, and hair were meticulously tested in pristine laboratories, mathematically stripping away the folklore to reveal the biological truth. The genetic verdict was overwhelmingly clear. The physical artifacts belonged almost exclusively to the Himalayan brown bear, the Tibetan brown bear, and the Asian black bear. These high-altitude bears are magnificent, imposing creatures that can occasionally walk on their hind legs, creating a terrifyingly human-like bipedal silhouette in a blizzard. Furthermore, when a bear's paw print melts under the intense alpine sun, it stretches and distorts, easily mimicking the giant track of a bipedal hominid. So, does this conclusive DNA evidence mean the legendary Yeti is simply a case of mistaken identity? A bear heavily disguised by human imagination? From a strict biological standpoint, yes, the vast majority of physical evidence firmly points to known, albeit rare and elusive, local mountain wildlife. Yet, ecology tells us that mountains are vast, deeply complex three-dimensional labyrinths where smaller unknown species could theoretically still hide from human eyes. The fossil record is notoriously incomplete, a fragmented biological puzzle missing countless pieces, especially in alpine environments where shifting glaciers crush fragile bones. We know that the colossal ape Gigantopithecus roamed ancient Asia for nearly 2 million years before mysteriously vanishing around 300,000 years ago. The small, isolated population have retreated upward into the mountains, slowly adapting to the bitter cold while their lowland cousins completely perished. While modern genetics firmly says no, the vast, unexplored, shadow-filled valleys of the Himalayas still whisper with the seductive, romantic possibility of the unknown. The boundary between myth and biology is sometimes drawn not just by the absence of a creature, but by the strict limits of our own perception. Beyond the DNA and the footprints, the Yeti mystery persists because it taps into a fundamental human psychological need to believe the world is still vast and untamed. We live in an age of total surveillance, where satellites map every square meter of the Earth and the unknown feels like a shrinking resource. The idea of a giant, ancient primate thriving in the high peaks offers a comforting rebellion against the hyper-organized digital world we've built for ourselves. Anthropologists suggest that legends like the Yeti serve as boundary markers, reminding us where the human world ends and the dangerous, sacred wild begins. Our brains are evolutionarily tuned to the frequency of the monster, a survival mechanism that kept our ancestors alert to predators in the tall grass. This biological paranoia means that even when we see a bear or a shifting shadow, our subconscious might prefer to see a humanoid threat. But there is a scientific concept that gives a tiny sliver of hope to the dreamers: the Lazarus taxon, species that disappear from the fossil record only to reappear. In 1938, a coelacanth was pulled from the ocean, a fish thought to be extinct for 66 million years, proving that nature is excellent at keeping secrets. If a prehistoric fish can hide in the depths of the ocean, could a large primate hide in the vertical, oxygen-deprived deserts of the high Himalayas? The problem is one of carrying capacity, the amount of food and energy an environment can provide to sustain a healthy, breeding population of large animals. A creature the size of a Yeti would need massive amounts of calories, a difficult requirement in a landscape primarily composed of rock, ice, and thin air. Biologists calculate that for a species to avoid the extinction vortex, it needs a minimum viable population of several hundred individuals to maintain genetic health. Several hundred massive hairy humanoids roaming a specific region should, statistically, be much easier to spot than a single, lonely wanderer of legend. Every sighting that is debunked as a bear or a misidentified rock adds weight to the scientific consensus that the Yeti is a cryptid of the mind. Yet, the mystery of the Yeti isn't just about the creature itself, it's about our deep-seated fear of being the only intelligent species left on the planet. For millions of years, the Earth was a crowded house of different, human-like beings, a biological reality that only ended a few dozen millennia ago. Perhaps the Yeti is the ghost of those lost cousins, a cultural phantom limb that we refuse to stop feeling even though the limb is long gone. It is a personification of the wilderness, a reminder that nature does not care about our maps, our taxonomies, or our desire to name everything. Even if the Yeti is only a bear, it is a bear that has been transformed by human wonder into something far more significant than a mere animal. In the silence of the high peaks, the line between what is real and what we need to be real becomes as thin as the mountain air itself. If the Yeti is a phantom of the frost, then the mapinguari of the Amazon is a monster of the deep, suffocating green. Deep within the rainforests of Brazil and Bolivia, indigenous tribes have long whispered about a massive, foul-smelling beast with skin like iron. Descriptions of the mapinguari are surreal. It is said to be a giant bipedal creature with a second mouth gaping open on its belly. While this sounds like pure nightmare fuel, many cryptozoologists and paleontologists believe these stories are not about a monster, but a memory. They suggest the mapinguari is actually a remnant of the megatherium, the giant ground sloth that once dominated the South American landscape. Imagine a creature the size of an elephant, standing on its hind legs to reach the canopy, covered in long, coarse, reddish-brown hair. These titans possessed dermal ossicles, small bones embedded in their skin which would have acted like a suit of biological chainmail against predators. This iron skin matches the legends perfectly, and even the belly mouth could be a misinterpretation of the sloth's large, scent-secreting glands. Officially, the giant ground sloth went extinct approximately 10,000 years ago, around the time humans were becoming the dominant force in the region. But the Amazon is the world's greatest biological vault, a sprawling sea of trees so dense that some parts remain virtually unseen by modern science. Dr. David Oren, a prominent biologist, spent years trekking through the basin, collecting hundreds of eyewitness accounts from hunters who had never met one another. The consistency of their descriptions is haunting. The stench of rotting meat, the terrifying human-like scream, and the immunity to traditional hunting arrows. Despite these compelling stories, multiple expeditions into the deep jungle have failed to produce a single clear photograph or a fresh biological sample. The Amazon's high humidity and acidic soil are a nightmare for preservation, quickly dissolving bones and hair before they can ever be discovered by researchers. In this environment, a species could theoretically slip into extinction multiple times without ever leaving a fossil record for us to find. Is it possible that a small population of these Pleistocene giants survived into the modern era, hidden by the sheer scale of the jungle? As we strip away the forest for cattle and industry, we are destroying the very habitat where such a creature would have made its final stand. Every year, we discover thousands of new species in the Amazon, though most are tiny insects or plants rather than multi-ton prehistoric mammals. The mapinguari represents the ultimate conflict between our desire for a magical world and the cold, hard data of ecological extinction. Whether it is a living fossil or a cultural echo, the creature stands as a guardian of the Amazon's dwindling, mysterious green heart. Whether we look to the frozen peaks or the humid jungle, the search for these hidden species reveals more about the human condition than the creatures themselves. We are a species of explorers who have suddenly run out of horizons, living on a planet that feels smaller and more transparent with every passing year. Scientific rigor is our greatest tool for understanding reality, but it can also be a cold light that bleaches the color out of our world's remaining mysteries. If we prove that every yeti is a bear and every mapinguari is a myth, we gain knowledge, but we lose a sense of cosmic humility. There is a profound biological loneliness in being the last surviving branch of a once crowded family tree of diverse, intelligent hominids. Legends of the wild man might be our subconscious refusing to accept that we are truly alone in the dark with no cousins left to talk to. From an ecological perspective, these myths act as a vital placeholder for the biodiversity we have lost and the habitats we must protect. If believing in a monster is what it takes for us to value a remote mountain or a pristine forest, then the monster has a practical, evolutionary purpose. Science doesn't need to kill the mystery to be successful. It can instead frame the mystery as a goal, a reason to keep looking closer. We must remain skeptical of claims without evidence, but we should also remain open to the possibility that nature is deeper than our current instruments can measure. The history of science is a long list of impossible things that turned out to be true once we found the right way to look at them. Perhaps the yeti and the mapinguari are not physical animals, but biological archetypes living forever in the fertile soil of the human imagination. As our cities grow and our forests shrink, the spaces where these creatures could exist are becoming smaller and more precious. We are the guardians of this planet, and that includes being the guardians of the secrets it hasn't finished telling us yet. To be human is to stand at the edge of the light, peering into the shadows and wondering what might be staring back with curious eyes. We may never find a body or a bone or a clear photograph that satisfies the peer review process of modern zoology. But maybe the value of the search isn't in the finding, it's in the state of wonder that keeps us questioning our place in the universe. So we will keep setting up camera traps, keep sequencing ancient DNA, and keep telling stories about the things that go bump in the night. Because a world without monsters is a world where we finally figured everything out, and that might be the scariest prospect of all. What other secrets is our planet still hiding from us, and are we truly ready to find the answers?